Or go on your phone or something.
Good evening, and thank you guys for coming to my presentation today regarding cultural communication. I will be focusing on the English culture. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen, by Sir Winston Churchill. So what is communication? Communication is an act or an instance of transmitting a verbal or written message. Communication is essential for satisfying practical needs, can satisfy physical health, and it can also satisfy your emotional well-being. Some characteristics of cultural communication are translation, which is when words are different between one culture and another. For example, for the English, garden in English means yard or lawn. However, here in America, it means like where we grow our vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. Directness is the difference between low context and high context. Low context is when people express their thoughts and feelings and ideas. They value the straight talk, which is an example of the Americans and the Canadians. High context maintains social harmony, ambiguity, and silence, is admired, which is represented by Asians, Koreans, and Japanese. So some English values as I get started about their culture. Is first off to know the difference between British and English. British is all the people from England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So that whole group is considered British people. However, English people are considered the people only from England. So some English values are, the first one is that they have a very big belief in freedom. They have a very high tolerance of others. They accept personal and social responsibility, and they respect and uphold the rule of law by the Queen. So some experiences with the United States and the English culture. The British were the reason that the Americans developed cultural characteristics. They're responsible for laws, political, and cultural links that link back to Great Britain. The first colonies, the New England and Virginia colonies, were developed mostly containing English descendants. And they had different types of immigrants that would come in and establish those colonies. In 1790, the U.S. Census population in the United States contained 60% English and 8% Welsh. Those immigrants obtained their legal residence in the U.S. were mainly from England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, which is also considered Great Britain. The exact population statistics were started to track in 1830 by British immigration. However, up until 1851, the count of immigrants was not significant because the majority of immigrants were Irish and they weren't considered English. The immigration did peak in the 1880s due to growth of the British population, which left unbelievable urban cultures and the cease in the British Revolution, which was due to the Germany and France takeover. And then British immigrants declined in the earliest 20th century, however surged after World War II due to war brides, which were females who ended up meeting American soldiers, and they ended up leaving the country and moved back to America with their spouses if they got married or their significant others. Some achievements of England. In 1215, the Magna Carta was signed, which was an important document that every man is free until they're proven guilty, and the king had to take advice from people. He couldn't just go ahead and make his own rules. In 1837, the UK abolished slavery, which set an example to the rest of the world that slavery needed to be banned. In 1928, equal voting rights were proved for men and women, and in 1940, the UK won the Battle of Britain. So, to get into the English culture, there are some do's and taboos that they talk about. So first of all, for the English, eye contact is like one of the worst things over there. So when we talk here in America, we make sure we have eye contact so that you know people are listening and understanding what you're saying. However, over in England, it is completely rude, and the person that you're talking to feels like you're threatening them almost. So I thought that was pretty interesting. They're very keen on politeness. They are always saying yes please, no thank you, excuse me, may I please. So that is one of like their key staples. And then they also have a weird fetish about personal space. Whenever you greet someone here in America, a lot of times if it's a close family friend, you will give a hug or a high five or maybe a kiss. However, in there, they may give a handshake and that's it, or an air kiss. Some communication patterns is the first one, sarcasm. So that's very rarely used in England. It goes against their complete structure of communication. Taking turns communicating. They also call it cueing. So, for instance, if I'm having a conversation with someone, the next the person I'm talking to will not interrupt my conversation until I am completely done talking. I know my brother-in-law, when I interviewed him, he said it was very weird here in the States because when the thought came in, we would instantly go and jump in, say what we had to say. And they do not express their feelings well. So some English communication tips to remember. 1, do not interrupt them because they become very threatened and they think you're completely rude. That is something that is never done, again, due to the taking turns of communication and the communication cueing. There are different words that have different meanings, like I explained previously. And there's also a very cool Twitter page that I found called @SoVeryBritish, which will explain different phrases and vocabulary words that are different between the cultures. So in conclusion, the English, British, and the United States use the same common language. However, it's very interesting and sometimes baffling. As I mentioned in the previous slide. And communication styles are definitely different between the two. The English is considered the North American is considered individualistic, and the English are considered very collectivistic. Thank you.
Woo!
Okay, we gotta go.